give everyone enough time to be here. Okay, I'm seeing a pause now. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for making it to Making the Invisible Visible, Creating Inclusivity for Students with Dependence on College Campuses workshop. Before we get started, we would just like to recognize the Yaqui Tutu Northern Chumash tribe on whose traditional lands Cal Poly sits. We acknowledge them as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. My name is Ashlee Hernandez. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am the founder of the Students with Dependence Initiative. Today, I'd just love to provide some context to why we are both involved in this work. For me, when I first enrolled at Cal Poly, I was already overwhelmed as a first generation, low income student of color. So there was just no way that I could imagine also disclosing that I had a dependent. It wasn't until my daycare center actually called for me to pick up my sick child that I was forced to tell my professor that I had to miss class and couldn't give a presentation that was 40% of my overall grade that day. Unfortunately, my professor did not allow me to make up the missed classwork that day. So I ended up having to call my childcare center and beg them to keep my kid for 30 more minutes so I could present and do my presentation really quickly, super stressed out. I was like crying before I did it, and then rushed to the children's center to pick up my son. So that's really been the foundation of my work. And as I started to talk to other student parents, that's when I realized that they also face the same inequity of not feeling centered or even recognized in many policies and practices within our institution. So we started this student parent coalition, and today we are still working hard to advocate for the systemic policies and practices that prioritize the needs of student parents. And I'm happy to share that 50-year-old class attendance policy has now been amended, and our collective impact is super foundational to all of the work that we have accomplished at Cal Poly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm Jasmin Othman. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm the AmeriCorps VIP Fellow for Parent and Family Programs, and I am currently heading the Students with Dependence Initiative. I'm a Cal Poly alumni, and I was a student parent. Coming from a low socioeconomic background, being a first-gen student, and a parent, I was nervous to finish school, but I was also really excited. Right around the time I was accepted to Cal Poly, my son, who was 3 at the time, had just been diagnosed with autism. This was a challenging time for me as I was trying to set up support for him and set myself up for success in continuing my education. I called Cal Poly's Children's Center explaining that my son was autistic, and I asked if I'd be able to enroll him. I was told more or less, "I don't know what you want from us." I've since become experienced in advocating for my son and for myself, but at the time I was overwhelmed. So I ended the call and I began my academic journey with the mindset that I was in this alone. Fortunately, I had family to care for my son, but if I didn't, I'm sure I wouldn't have continued my education.
So today we'll talk a little bit about work-family justice and how that applies to higher ed. We will present our qualitative content analysis on all California public colleges, and then we'll apply how we've done a little bit of learn by doing here at Cal Poly by changing the status quo for student parents here in our institution, and then we'll be introducing our amazing student parent panel. So in terms of work-family justice, it recognizes that institutions of higher ed operate under care-blind environments, meaning there's an assumption that students are free of parenting and other caregiving responsibilities. The overall care-blind orientation of campuses makes student parents believe they need to manage all of their parenting-related conflicts on their own in order to conform to this normative student identity, especially here at Cal Poly, where we know we're at a predominantly white institution, and there are many, mostly traditionally aged students here. So if student parents identify with other marginalized identities, such as being first generation, low income, undocumented, or even a person with a disability, They often lack the resources that their privileged counterparts receive. We've also found that when resources are available, they are often difficult to navigate, and student parents find themselves going from office to office, uh, staff member to staff member, trying to find the correct information. These multiple marginalized identities and the lack of institutional support for parenting students create compounding challenges. But this is why we are all here, and it's our job to shift this work life paradigm to recognize the intersectionality of all student parents. And because we know if we center the voices of the most marginalized, then everyone succeeds and has place at the table. In this quote, the student discusses the pressure a colorblind institution can create within a student parent. The student says, basically, the responsibilities I have to my family outweigh my desire to engage more at school. I can be very disheartening and isolating at times. I never feel like giving my family what they need, but I never feel like I'm giving my professors what they need either. It's often that our students feel as if they are being pulled in two separate directions. It can feel as if they're being a really good student and they're studying and doing all the extracurriculars. There's this internal guilt like they're being maybe not a good parent. And when they're being a really good parent and they're taking their kids to the park and they're doing all the things, they're reading books and doing all the homework together, then there's always this compounding, competing feeling that they should be studying and maybe they're not being a good parent at that time. So it's the care blind institutions and the assumption that we all are, many people in higher ed have, that we don't have caregiving or caregiving duties, and the culture that creates these compounding challenges and conflicting feelings within student parents.
So that's a picture of me and my son right after graduation. He's now 7. So I previously conducted research through the Beacon Mentorship Program under the supervision of Cal Poly professor, Dr. Tina Chuk. I collected and analyzed data in order to determine how institutions of higher ed could better support more equitable practices for student parents. I researched ways California public colleges and universities are creating a more inclusive environment for student parents through their policies and practices that are present on their public websites. My research question was, in what ways are California public colleges and universities moving toward a more inclusive environment that supports pregnant and parenting students' needs for familial, academic, and life success? So using content analysis, I examined each college's website for policies and practices across 18 categories shown in the table here. For each category, I rated for the presence and absence of resources in support of student parents on a scale of 0 to 2, with 0 being no support, 1 being some support, and 2 being support. An example of a category that I would have ranked a 1 would be if a college had only 1 lactation room, because while the resource was present, it still would have created a barrier for student parents because they would often have to wait to use the room. And as we know, student parents have very little time as it is. So 90% of community colleges had childcare centers, but resources quickly began to diminish after that, which was surprising and startling because most student parents attend community college. Many of our Cal Poly students have transferred from the 2 closest community colleges, Allen Hancock College and Cuesta College. Although their websites didn't list extensive resources, I've repeatedly heard from students in our club that they were of great support to them. In researching community colleges, Los Angeles Valley College immediately stood out. Not only do they have a childcare center, they have free after-school care. They have a grant specifically for student parents, a student parent center, fun family events, and a kid-friendly study lounge. They mention student parents who have children with disabilities and connect them to their local regional center. They have counseling for student parents, including a psychotherapist, a resource counselor, and an academic counselor. Los Angeles Valley College is truly a model school for investing in the success and well-being of students and their children. So CSU's echoed community colleges and not having many resources or accommodations for their student parents aside from childcare. but I do want to highlight CSU Long Beach. On top of childcare, they have an inclusive class attendance policy, lactation spaces. They explicitly mention pregnant and parenting students in reference to Title IX. They provide a student parent center and have a webpage specifically for pregnant and parenting students. They also have the organization Pregnant and Parenting Student Association. And as seen in the picture here, their library has a child-friendly study space with laptops, iPads, and toys where student parents can bring their kids to study. So UCs offer far more resources. Just to name a few, on top of childcare, 100% provide healthcare for dependents, 86% offer housing, and 66% offer grants to student parents. So UC Berkeley, on top of the resources that are already mentioned, they have 14 lactation spaces. And in my research, it was extremely rare for me to find a college or a university that even acknowledged student parents, much less counted them and publicly displayed the population. UC Berkeley did just that, and they stated that 10% of their students are parents.
One limitation of this is that the institutions we examined, only one listed how many students with dependents are attending their campus, making this population data invisible. Nationally, we know that student parents make up about 26% of all students attending college, yet institutions do not track data on this population, leaving many of their needs unmet, especially during a global pandemic where we know their needs have been exacerbated. System-wide data tracking to assess the needs is super important. We know that only 6% of students with dependents will graduate within 6 years. So if institutions are proactively assessing what barriers are impeding their success, like basic needs, access to technology, a fear of disclosing their caregiving status, and the ability to negotiate extensions on projects and things like that, or even childcare limitations, then it will improve retention rates for institutions overall. And also increasing resources is another retention effort.
So student parents need family restrooms. Finding a baby changing table or a private bathroom shouldn't be another obstacle. Having on-campus study spaces would allow student parents to embrace their identities and being a student and a parent simultaneously. We know how important a sense of belonging is in a student's success. Making more events family inclusive would inevitably make more student parents feel as though they belong and are part of the campus community. We've seen that even when resources are offered to students with dependents, they are challenging to navigate. A student parent center is crucial in eliminating this barrier.
So we have used all of this research to change the status quo at Cal Poly, and it has taken substantial amount of work because if you know higher ed, you know that it takes forever to make change. So one thing we have found helpful for organizational change is something called ethos, pathos, logos. So ethos is basically using ethics to convince an audience through ethics. So I've showed up to committee meetings and distributed letters written by homeless students living in their cars with their children to receive grant funding. And because we do not track any data on this population, it's easy to forget about their needs, and basic needs really never talked about childcare as a basic need. And especially thinking about if we have a student parent who's homeless, that means their children are also homeless. Or if we have a student parent who is food insecure, that means their children are also food insecure. So something powerful about that is that you're not only helping a student parent or student, but you're helping a second generation. For the ethos component, it's using, for the pathos component, it's appealing to emotion. So using storytelling, we've rallied groups of students to speak at open forums for our board of directors about how policies on campus do not serve our population. And really uplifting the student parent voice has always been foundational to all of the work that we do. And then a logos appealing to logic is just a way of persuading an audience with reason using facts and figures. And we know that a lot of this work takes buy-in from administration. I've been asked, are there even student parents at Cal Poly? Which is funny because we have a lot of them, in fact. And that's why we've used data as such an important tool for people who need to see the facts and figures to see what the student parent actual population is. For our core values of the Students with Dependence Initiative, it's just creating inclusivity, making sure that student parents' voices are heard and they are centered in every part of campus, streamlining access to resources because we know largely this population is first generation. So making sure that our students are aware of all the resources on campus. And then a sense of belonging, making sure that student parents have the opportunity to meet other student parents because our experiences are so unique. We know that our day-to-day activity just is not represented in the average student's life. So being able to talk about, oh, my kid lost their shoes this morning before class and I was late to and I almost missed my exam, or my kid dropped soda or milk all over themselves and I was on my way to campus. So just hearing someone to understand, having others listen and understand those experiences goes a long way. And then, of course, networking. We have a group chat, and students are always in the chat talking about, like, oh, did you hear about this scholarship? Or there's this opportunity for student parents, and making sure that those resources are centered for student parents. I know I talked about the Student Parent Coalition, but in 2016 is when we formed, but we were able to meet with President Armstrong and Vice President Keith Humphrey in 2019. We talked about all of our needs, including basic needs, access to priority registration, and a couple of other really cool systemic resources. And we launched the Students with Dependence Initiative. And now we have the Student Parent Coalition that is growing. We have 27 members, and they are really just our advisory board. They're the eyes and the ears of all of the work that we do, making sure that we are always uplifting and centering what their needs are. Our president is Francisca, who's on our panel. Our vice president is Rose. Secretary is Santana, who will be on our panel, and treasurer is Tara. So who are students with dependence at Cal Poly? Like I said, it was super important for us to collect data on this population. So far, we know that there are 324 students who self-identify with a dependent. That was very surprising to us because after we found out the admissions data actually captures this, we had about a third less. We know that now 90% are mostly undergraduate, and most of those are transfer students, and a smaller percentage are graduate students, 10%. And then almost half, are underrepresented minorities, and 40% are first generation college students. I'm biased, but I always like to say that our students are the cream of the crop. We have 6 grads that are featured every year in the great grads. So we have 6 colleges and then 6 students, so 1 student per college. And 3 out of the 6 were actually featured as student parents, with amazing stories of all of the things that they overcame just to be in class every day. So we are making progress in our Students with Dependence initiative. We have tons of programmatic efforts happening. We have data collection and assessment through something called Campus Labs. We also have a website with resources specific to student parents, with both community and on-campus resources. We were really lucky to receive the AB 74 grant funding, which hired an AmeriCorps member to help lead this work. And then we are constantly in contact with campus and community partners. We know that many students identify as undocumented. So we're really in close contact with our Dream Center. We know that many students also receive CalWORKs government assistance, and there are a lot of signatures and logistics and part of that. So we're really connected with the Department of Social Services. We also know that our students need help with financial aid. So we've recreated a liaison for financial aid who is able to come and talk about applying for scholarships as a student with a dependent. And then, of course, social media engagement, making sure we're doing direct outreach to our students and we're engaging with them on Instagram and Facebook. Some services that we provide are orientation. So we want to meet students before they even get to step on campus so we can tell them about all of the resources available to them and we can get them connected to other student parents. Our goal for this year for the incoming students would be to create an older classman mentorship to help the students who are incoming learn a little bit more about Cal Poly. We also have a pregnant student liaison. We were able to change the class attendance policy. So now when students dependents are sick, ill, or injured, they will have the opportunity to make missed classwork up. We also have priority registration. We were hearing about students who were taking night classes, but also took the bus. So after 8 p.m., they would have to Uber home or arrange a ride. Also parking permits. So it's on a lottery basis, but if you aren't receiving one through the lottery, we are able to connect you with a parking permit. So students are not having to run around and waste time since we know we're strapped for time. Also, emergency housing is offered through our university housing for students and their dependents. And then we are so happy to have a monthly newsletter where we spotlight alumni and students, parents, and provide tons of resources for our student parents on there. And then, of course, family inclusive events.
So our Student Parent Coalition Club has biweekly meetings where a sense of community has been established. More than anything, this club has created a safe space for our student parents to be vulnerable as they express the added challenges that they face. We've hosted fun activities such as a gingerbread making activity, virtually, of course. We've also hosted academic-based workshops such as Beyond the Bachelor's, preparing for grad school. Our club members continuously express how much this community means to them. We all know how wonderful it is to connect with those who share the same experiences as we do, especially when we are facing challenges and hardships. They have also expressed that the resources that have been offered to them, such as special exception registration, have directly aided in their success. I am so excited to welcome our extraordinary student panelists, Madison, Jason, Letty, Santana, and Francisca.
Yay, I'm gonna go ahead and pin all of you so folks can see you. Let's see, Letty, Francisca. Okay, I think I have everyone. Am I missing anyone? Santana, where is Santana? Oh, there she is. Okay, perfect. All right, would we like to do introductions just to everyone can meet all of you? So we'll start with Madison.
Hi, yeah, my name is Madison. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a biology student at Cal Poly in my final year, which is exciting. And I have two children who are ages 8 and 5.
Yay, thank you, Madison, for being here. Santana?
Hi, my name is Santana. I am currently a fourth year social major. I'm sorry, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I have 3 children, ages 13, 11, and 4.
Thank you, Santana, for being here. Letty?
Hi, my name is Leticia Santiago. My pronouns is she and her. This is my 4th year studying sociology, and I have a baby boy of 2 years old.
We can hear him. Hi.
Sorry about that. I didn't
No,
have anybody to take care of him, but yeah.
These are the real student parent experiences here. Jason.
Hi everyone, my name is Jason Davis. My pronouns are he, him, his. I call myself a super junior mechanical engineering major. I transferred to Cal Poly from Allen Hancock College, so that was fun. I have 2 kids, ages 18 months and almost 6 years. So everybody.
Thanks, Jason, for being here. Francisca?
Hello, everybody. My name is Francisca Camarillo. My major is liberal studies, she, her, hers. And I have 3 children, ages 9, 11, and 13.
Yay. Okay, well, we have one question. So I know we have such a wide array of experiences in this panel, so I'm so excited for everyone to hear about them. What can you all share? What are the biggest challenges you have faced as a student parent at Cal Poly? And anyone can jump in.
I could go. I think that my biggest challenge being a student parent is probably time management. I know that you guys had Ashley and Jasmin mentioned earlier in the slide that it's just really difficult, just to, you know, I guess manage your time being a student and a parent. It's like you're at the park with your children or you're trying to do your schoolwork, and just being able to schedule out your time and give yourself to both of those is just really difficult. So I think that's probably my personal most difficult aspect of being a student parent.
I can go ahead and answer that too. So I think three major issues stand out to me. I mean, time management has been, I think, echoed a lot through this presentation. I love the first or second slide with, the woman holding her child, and has 6 or 8 arms, holding different stuff. I mean, I think that just sums it up. But yeah, I mean, I think the time management has been critical. I mean, as with kids, you have a morning routine, you have an evening routine, and once that routine starts, it's kind of hard to derail it or try to multitask and do any kind of studying in the middle of that. So you'll typically find yourself studying way later than is optimal for you to do so. There's a need to work. I mean, it's more than just you, and so at least for myself, my wife, we both have jobs, and oftentimes those jobs need amount of time from us that makes it hard to both do school and care for our children. And then just the isolation that comes with having a job, being, for me, I'm married, and having children, when you're in class and your classmates find out that you have children, that's, at least for me, it's like, you must be that weird old guy, with kids, or you must have made a mistake because you had kids and so you did it wrong before school, and it's kind of leaves out space for the decision to have children, being just that. It was a conscious decision that I made, that my wife and I made, that I'm thankful for. But yet here we are in school trying to make it all fly. So yeah, that's sort of been my experience.
Yeah, can go. Yeah, as others said, yeah, time managers, one of the hardest things that I'm facing as well, and also childcare. I know I receiving childcare from Alejandra College, but sometimes with this pandemic and when he's sick, so I can't find someone who can take care of him, because as I'm working as well, so I need to, sometimes I have to take him at my work. Because I can't leave him alone here in the house. Yeah, that find the childcare, and also sometimes I can't find enough time focus on my class assignments. Having a baby, how much energy he wants, you just be playing with him there. So, and then you can say no because he start crying, everything. But yeah, it's like start. I don't know, like I'm sorry. I think one of the hardest things is to know how to balance your time, like giving a specific time to him and your classes work. I think that one of the hardest things as well, being a parent with dependents.
Another really hard thing while going to school distance learning right now, I have my son, he's autistic, and he's doing distance learning as well. It was really hard because I had to navigate his kind of like his classes, his schedule, have everything set up, make sure he was paying attention in class, and that he was actually learning, because kids with special needs with distance learning, it just doesn't go. So that really distracted me from my classes. And it was like I was sitting in front of my screen, trying to pay attention in class, trying to help him at the same time. And it just got to a point where I just couldn't anymore. I spoke to my professor. He totally understood. But still, it doesn't take away, struggling to learn and at the same time, make sure that my kids are learning too.
For me, I think a couple of my biggest difficulties have already been expressed. So the time constraints. I work, I'm a single mom, I'm in this major that in biology, in addition to lectures, we have a lot of required in-person, even during COVID, in-person 3-hour-long labs. So there just really aren't enough hours in the day to accomplish all the things that need to be accomplished. And like Letty said, difficulties with finding childcare. I've missed class innumerable times because I have had a babysitter fall through or couldn't find somebody or something like that. And another third challenge for me was feeling the need to be discreet about being a parent. In biology, a really critical thing is getting research experience. And I felt like in order to obtain that necessary experience, I couldn't really let professors know that I had a kid and still be, again, competitive for those positions. And that leads to, like everybody else has mentioned, a sense of isolation. People don't know you have kids. And like Ashlee mentioned, if your teachers don't know, you can't say like, I wasn't there because they were sick, or I wasn't there because this thing happened. So it kind of creates a whole nother layer of difficulty.
Yeah, there's been like this common theme that many students face with it, which is time constraint. It's because like many of us are working and we have caregiving duties, and then we're also studying, and you're like pulled to all these directions that the actual time that you have of quality time to sit down and participate in anything is really small. So thank you all of you for bringing all of your diverse perspectives into your classrooms and being here at Cal Poly, because you really are the forerunners for so many other student parents to come. In addition to that, now your children are all going to go to college. You're changing the trajectory of not only your life, but your children's lives.
Thank you everyone for sharing. I'm going to take the next question. So what are some myths about student parents that you would like to debunk?
I would love to answer that question. And I kind of just touched on this. So some of us might be familiar with the idea of the motherhood penalty, which is a research supported phenomena that women or mothers and parents, but especially mothers in the workforce, are perceived as being less committed or less available, and just generally have worse outcomes in the labor market, or they're less likely to be hired. And I think an example that I can provide of my own experience was, I mentioned research experience is really important, critical really, in biology. If you're going to go to grad school, you have to have it to be a competitive applicant. If you're going to go straight into employment, they're going to want you to have it. So for me, when I first started in the biology department, I reached out to a professor and asked him to let me know if he heard of any research opportunities involving wildlife, because that was what I wanted to do. And then heard later on, a couple of weeks later, that he had a position in his lab doing wildlife research. And so I touched base with him and I said, hey, I hear you have this position. Is there room for me? And he said, yeah, I would have offered it to you, but I just assumed you couldn't because you have kids. And that was a really big moment for me, where I was like, oh, the motherhood penalty, and this notion that if people know that you have kids, you might be counted out, and it might be kind of a major disadvantage. And for me, that was a point where I decided, like, oh gosh, I don't think I should tell my professors that I have kids anymore. And so I stopped doing that, and it ended up being advantageous to me, really, because I got chosen for some great research opportunities that I really highly doubt I would have been otherwise. But again, that comes with some major costs of kind of having to hide your identity. And in terms of being, a myth, research has been done on the motherhood penalty or perceptions around mothers in the workforce. And we know that mothers are actually often more committed. And I think that the same is probably true about our student parents. Like, we have this enormous incentive to do well in our study, to finish our degrees, probably even bigger incentive than most of our peers do. And I think a problem with this myth is that professors might perceive it not as being a bias or prejudice, but as kind of like following logical thought, like, oh, parents aren't available. And so I think it's really important that this bias can be brought to light so that we can work on addressing it, because we can't really do that when we don't know what our biases are.
Yes, I totally agree that the motherhood penalty is well and alive, and it's often really perpetuated in STEM fields. Many student parents also talk about like this feeling of having to wear a mask, like in the classroom or in the workforce, and not bringing forward any of those struggles that, like, all the things that they were like, they have to leave them at the door, everything that they did before they even got to the classroom. So, yes, that's so disheartening and heartbreaking to hear. I'm sorry that your professor said something like that. Ugh. Would anyone else like to talk about myths about student parents that they would like to debunk? Okay, so for the next question, we wanted to see how has the COVID-19 pandemic further impacted your experience as both a student and a parent?
Sorry, I can answer that question. And for me, I think being at home, studying, taking courses, I think there's more distraction. You can't just only focus on your classes. I know, but sometimes when I spend time home doing taking course classes, I have my baby here with me. It's not the same thing because he tied to me, so I can't just focus. I can't just spend my time just on that on my classes. So that's it's a big changes. It's a big changes for me, and also to you are less motivated. I can it's for me it's now feel like I can find the motivation that can push me to be able to continue with my classes, because I see like feel alone here just in the home, and I can't see someone else doing the same thing with me, so it's not the same thing. So there's less motivation, focus on courses, more distraction, and yeah.
Yes, lots of distractions.
I can add something too. Um, so I mentioned my wife and I both work. We're actually both healthcare workers, and one of the biggest challenges to us has been, with more people getting sick, there's a greater need for us to be present at work. I work on an ambulance. My wife actually works in the hospital, and so you feel this altruistic pull to go to work and go help and go engage with what you were trained to do before you went to school. But then you also have to focus on your studies, otherwise you're not going to ever finish your degree. But now that all schools are shut down, now you have to either do distance learning, or you have to homeschool, or you have to find some other alternative. And so the best decision for our family was for me to actually homeschool my son. So I do that during school hours, but then I also try to attend my classes. And I mean, my wife and I frequently have conversations like, there just aren't enough hours in the day. When are we going to get this time for me to take a midterm, or me to study, or hey, all right, you're home. I mean, there'll be weeks where my wife will come home from work and shower real quick. I'll jump in the car and go drive to work and work a night shift, and then try to grab some sleep in the morning. And then she's got to go to work, and then I've got to go back on. So, and then just trying to communicate that with professors. I don't know if maybe people are numb to it at this point, but it seems a bit like it's, yeah, everyone's busy. And there isn't really I found trouble finding a really attentively listening ear for for the things that we're facing that not everybody is. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Jason. I'm going to take the next question. So how can Cal Poly's facilities and/or faculty and staff be better allies to student parents?
I could go. I really think that teachers and staff at Cal Poly could be better allies for students in a way that maybe like we could establish, better relationships with our professors, and be able to be open about being a student parent and just gaining that capital on those relationships. I think it's really important and imperative to our education because we really need those professors to really advocate for us because a lot of us are wanting to reach, higher education and we're really dedicated students and feeling that I think that we're like isolated, and that we can't be open about our children is really, it's just such a, I guess, like a negative effect on a relationship, and we don't want to open those up, And so just being able to have those relationships, I think, with professors would really establish, a lot of, a better education program, I think, for student parents to be able to move forward comfortably and not feel like we need to hide.
Thank you so much, Santana. Do you want to talk about Cal Poly's facilities at all, specifically the UU or the rec center?
Yeah, I would love to. Actually, so my 4-year-old actually goes to the ASI Children's Center, and so he's able to. He meets a lot of students that work in the ASI Children's Center, and it's really fun for him to walk across campus pre-pandemic, of course, and he's able to see familiar faces, and I think it's really fun for him. Being able to like we're really an active family and stuff, and so we've had instances like where we've tried to enter the rec center and we were denied access because my son was too young to be there, and so like not having I guess that space to be inclusive for us with our dependents was it was a bummer, because it's like he's going to school with me, he's going to school for himself, in his eyes, and it would be nice to have those spaces that are more inclusive. And I think like going into the UU as well, you walk in and it's busy and it's like you want to get there and start studying and doing your work, but you kind of it's like, okay, well, where can I go with my son? Because it just isn't really inclusive, I think, for us with our children. And so it's hard knowing that I go there with my son and he's there with me every single day and not having a space where we could be together so I could get work done and he could do, his work still.
Thank you so much for sharing, Santana. Would anyone else like to talk about how Cal Poly's facilities or faculty and staff could be better allies to students with dependence?
I can go ahead and answer that question. I remember that during slow days, I wanted to participate and be part of everything. But it was very, quickly, I really understood that that wasn't going to be a possibility for me. When you look at the student demographic, it's mostly like young people of a certain age. We're a little bit older parents, and we have children. So I really wanted to be engaged in the school and clubs and events and everything. I signed up for Polycultural Weekend and I was part of an orientation for EOP and then also WOW Week. However, I started missing my son and I really wanted to bring him over to Cal Poly. So I asked if I could and my WOW leader said, yeah, of course, go ahead and bring him. But when we try to participate in the same, kind of events that they were trying to do, we couldn't. It was just not possible for us because I had my son with me, and he would like get tired really quick, or he wanted to go get some yogurt. So we just decided to go our own ways and do our own things. And then later on, once I started school, I remember that my son, who's autistic, started developing depression, and he was just saying like things like, why should I live, and it was just very scary. But I still needed to pass all my classes. So what I decided to do is bring him over to Cal Poly. And so I remember that we went to the city, we ate sushi, and then we went to Cal Poly and we were trying to find like a place, where I could study and he could just, be on his tablet or draw. But we couldn't find anything. The only place that we're kind of able to go was Yoga Creations. And then after that, we found the Multicultural Center, the MCC. That's the only place that was a little bit more chill. And I just kind of felt like people were staring at me weird, like, why is she like bringing her kid here, or why, what's going on here? So I felt very unwelcome. And then so I remember that we kind of, I was done doing homework and I wanted to go to the rec center. So I called and I asked, can my son come in? He's, 12 at that age, at that point. And they told me no, because of insurance, anybody younger than 16 can't come in. And since I hadn't been using the rec center at all, but was getting charged to use it, I felt that it was very like unjust that I was paying and I wasn't able to use it or be there with my child. So I think that having some sort of policy where we can bring our children to the rec center or to the pool, or like somewhere like that, or having a study space where we could bring our children, that would be amazing. And that would be somewhere where we could be both parents and students at the same time.
Yes, Francisca, I totally agree. What is the point of being a student parent if you can't bring your kids to campus to see all of the wonderful things that we are doing as student parents? Would anyone else like to answer that question before we ask one more? Okay, for our last question, it is, what brings you joy as a student parent? What would you like to share with the community here today? To share about what makes you the most happy.
I will go. I have an 11-year-old that wants to be a aerospace engineer. He changed it from nuclear engineering to aerospace. And he's really impressionist, or I'm really affecting his like thought process of going to college, because he sees how hard I'm working. And recently we were doing some kind of meeting in the transfer center, over Zoom, and there was actually an aerospace engineer student there, and he was willing to talk to my son, my 11-year-old, about going, doing aerospace. And I think that just melted my heart, because even though we are working so hard to be student parents and we have all of these struggles like along the way, hearing that just really showed me like I'm doing the right thing regardless of how difficult it is, and however, what I have to go through to, get through school. That seeing my son and hearing something like that just really just valued, what I'm doing to go to school.
I think something that brings me a lot of joy as a student parent is just watching the way that my daughter's a little too young to really get it right now, but the way that just watching my son react to what I'm learning, he'll frequently parrot a lot of the things that my professors say. So I was taking a class on electricity and magnetism, and he started talking about capacitors and was drawing out with his crayons, wires and different circuit diagrams, and it was hilarious to hear him talk about it. But as a young man, as a child, and as a young man, I hated school. I hated the idea of going to college, and one of the biggest reasons it took me so long to get to Cal Poly. And just watching the way that he, his enthusiasm is turned on by watching me go through the process and watching what I'm learning and watching little projects that I'm working on and things that I'm building. And just seeing the excitement that he gets, it's encouraging to me that he's getting a perspective of higher education that I never really had as a child. And so I'm really thankful, even though it's painful a lot of the time, it's pain worth enduring to just see the kind of positive impact it's having on his life.
Yeah, as Jason said, the same for me. Just seeing my baby doing the same thing, like doing simulation, what I'm doing, like trying to read his books, and that's like made me to think that how my interactions, how my direction is, how my action like push him like to act the same thing, like to that's like, I don't know how you say that, how my action is encouraging also doing the same thing to be successful in this world. So just, yeah, I think that's makes me feel more motivated, so to continue with my to finish my career as well. So yeah, it's for at the same time I feel like sad because I can't spend enough time with him, but I feel like childcare help him a lot to become more independent. And yeah, that's what I just imagine how much he has grown up and how much he learned. Just, it's kind of sad because I can't I sometimes I can't spend a lot of time with him there and teach him what has supposed to be like a mom, so need to be there with their sons. Yeah, but yeah. Sorry.
Something that brings me joy is knowing that my kids want to go to college as well. I always see them either reading or doing their multiplication times tables, and the other one's just drawing out there, saying that he wants to be a paleontologist. And then I get to take him to Cal Poly and go into the Fisher building, or go to the biology building, and then having him look at all the fossils. And also, just him knowing that he does want to go to college, and now he wants to be a YouTuber. So I'm like, okay, yeah, you could be an artist. You could be anything you want. So just, because I'm getting education, like I'm able to help him in his future. So that's, to me, that's just huge.
I think my thoughts are going to echo everybody else's, but yeah, just my kids will sometimes sit down and watch my lectures with me too, and I'm really excited about the subject matter. And my son talked about going to Cal Poly one day, and yeah, I have a lot of I feel really proud just knowing that the hard work that I'm putting in is paving the way for him and his trajectory, and that he will be more likely to actually attain that goal one day. And yeah, that has to be for sure the part that brings me the most joy.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing all of your amazing stories. It brings me so much joy that all of your kids are like future engineers and artists and biologists, and they're going to be yeah, and I'm sure they're all so proud of the hard work that you're doing. I did want to leave a couple of minutes open if anyone has any questions in the audience that they'd like to ask, whether it's about our research, our program, or to any of the panelists directly. We have about 5 more minutes.
Ashlee, I can share something. This is my name is Tina Chuk, and I've been supporting both Ashlee and Jasmin. And I just wanted to thank all of you for showing up, for all of the student parents. You are doing such phenomenal work if other people haven't told you so. So feel free to reach out to me as a faculty member if you feel you are hitting barriers or you need something moved out of your way so that you can graduate on time successfully and that your children feel welcomed here on campus. So I just wanted to thank you for your time. I know we all have very busy days, and I really appreciate your stories of resilience, joy, persistence, problem solving. It's really heartwarming, and this is why I do the work I do as a professor here. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chuk. Well, this is our contact information. If anyone wants to contact us later with any questions or would like to get connected, please do. And thank you for spending today with us. We appreciate all of your time. And a big, big, big thank you to our panelists. You are the reason, like Dr. Chuk said, we are here.
Thank you so much, Ashlee and Jasmin, for sharing your experience with us today, as well as to all the panelists. I think I really enjoyed hearing about everyone's experiences. I'm a child development major and I really want to work with kids in the future. And I know that I'm like nowhere near like, you know, like being able to understand like your guys' like experience and journey. And I feel like you guys are like all superhumans. And I feel like you guys inspire me to like, you know, get involved in like the children's center and stuff like that. And I love seeing kids on campus. So I'm sad it's COVID times, but hopefully after COVID, I can like maybe see your guys' kids too on campus and stuff like that. I'm sending a link in the chat right now. It's just a feedback form for this session, and it also enters you into a giveaway featuring CSQ masks, the Sonia Renee Taylor's newest book, and a $20 Starbucks gift card. And we are having our closing session at 3:15. So if you guys want to join in there too, I will see you there. But thank you everyone for sharing and coming. I really appreciate you guys.
Alrighty, bye everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.